guys, it's Mad Friday and welcome to another quick tank review. And today we're going to be looking at the Tier 7 Russian non-turreted tank destroyer, the SU-100M1. This is one of two Tier 7 Russian tank destroyers, and this is where the line splits from the SU-100. So we'll just have a quick look at the tech tree now. Right, so we find the SU-100 at Tier 6. Another line was added recently, the Object 263 line, so you now have two lines running from this one tank. So we have a look across. You have the SU-152 line, which goes up to the Object 268. These are all big 152mm equipped tanks, fairly well armoured, fairly slow, and massive alpha damage, whereas the new line that's been added is more about mobility and DPM. Again, they're both non-turreted tank destroyers though. I'm not as good with non-turreted tanks as I am with turreted tanks, but I am trying, and as you can see from some of the gameplay after this review, I am having some success, but not as much as with regular turreted tanks. But these tanks are in the game. I want to try and get every tank in the game, or have been through every tank in the game, so I'm having to do it. So, did I go back and replay the SU-100? No, I didn't. I saved up the 48,000 free XP needed to purchase the SU-100M1. I went through the SU-100 probably 2 years ago, and I did not want to go back and play it again. Yeah, that shows you what I thought of the SU-100. Anyway, so I now have the SU-100M1, and the reason I wanted to do this review today is because I wanted to talk about the packages. Let's go into them now. So once you've got your 48,000 free XP, or you've played the SU-100 enough to get the amount of XP needed to research and purchase this tank, as you can see, the green line above, it completely skips the whole upgrade state to go to the Tier 8 version. Would I do that? No. The stock tank is okay, but only okay, and doing the grind to the Tier 8 version with an only okay tank is going to really pee you off. So if I was you, I would do the upgrade tree. It doesn't take long. The packages, I can't see their prices, I'm afraid, because I've already researched them, so I'd love to tell you the research costs, but every step you take along the line to this package here, it gets gradually better, and the last upgrade package makes this tank really what it is. It's a pretty good tank, fully upgraded. It's not amazing, but it's good enough to do the full grind to the Tier 8 version. And we're going to talk about the packages now. Right, so the stock tank, as you can see, the sword bar is pretty much all the way full because there's only 2 guns on this tank. And you get the first gun straight away, and you keep it all the way to that package there, and then you get the better gun at the end. So what do you get on your way? So there you get some tracks and a radio, which you're going to need because the stock signal range is 325 meters. But as you see there, the gun stats for the stock gun are fairly good actually. 8.22 rounds a minute with a 100mm cannon. Even at Tier 8 that would be good, but you don't get particularly high penetration. It's only 175mm with your standard rounds and 250 alpha damage. Aim time is okay at 2 seconds, but accuracy is 0.37. And remember, this is a non-turreted tank destroyer, and it has extremely small gun arc, so with a 2-second aim time and 0.37 accuracy, by the time you set up for a shot, aimed in and fired, you might get one shot off, but if you're shooting at a moving target, I must say, before you then have to remove your tracks. So as the tank gets up, you get better tracks there and radio there, then you get a better engine and a better gun. And then the top package, you can take the top engine and go back to the gun before, but I wouldn't do that. Just save up and go to here. You get the top engine with the top gun. Let's have a look at the fully upgraded stats. So a 600 horsepower engine. Rate of fire goes up to a massive 9.52 rounds per minute. Remember, this is a 100mm cannon at Tier 7. You have more, well, not more DPM than some of the Tier 10 Russian mediums, but almost the same DPM as some Tier 10 Russian medium tanks. But you do pay with it with a bit of penetration loss compared to some of the other Tier 7 tank destroyers. It's only 175 pen, 250 alpha damage. That's the same as the IS at Tier 7, and that's not known for having particularly high penetration, so you do pay for that DPM with a little bit of pen loss. But the premium rounds got to 235 millimeters of penetration with the APCR rounds, and that is more than enough, and you will need some for tier 8, tier 9 games. But the next two stats is what really makes this tank playable. The aim time goes down to 1.7 seconds, which is fairly negligible, and accuracy is down to a brilliant 0.33 for a Russian tank. That is insanely good. And remember, like I said, non-turreted with a very small gun arc. With that sort of aim time and accuracy, you can move your tracks, aim in, get a couple of shots away, and then move your tracks, aim in, get another couple of shots away, and it becomes a lot easier to make the shots that you were probably missing with a stock tank. And that is why my main reason for advising you guys to take the upgrade route before going to the tier 8 version. And also, most of these bits are going to be used on other tanks in the Russian tech tree anyway. If you haven't really researched many tanks in the tech tree, most of the bits you buy are going to be used elsewhere somewhere anyway, so you may as well do it. You've got to do it at some point, so you may as well do it now. Right, so we've had a look at the packages. Crew skills. This was a new line. I had to start a new crew, so I've been training firefighting, and I'll explain why in a second. Once it hits 100%, I swapped it to 6 cents for the first one, retrained firefighting, swapped it to Brothers in Arms. Now I'm retraining firefighting again, and I will probably swap it to either snapshot, camouflage, or clutch braking. I'm trying to decide which one will suit me better. Clutch braking will bring up the track traverse, so it's a non-targeted tank destroyer, and that would help. Camouflage, because it's a sneaky tank, maybe making it more sneaky would help. And snapshot to help with the aim time, because you have to move your tracks a lot. So I don't really know which one to go for next, but I'll leave this bit up to you, and that's just what I chose to use. So what else are we going to look at? Quick look at my supplies. Got 25 standard rounds. Pen is okay, but you're going to need a fair stock of premium rounds. I've got 15 in this tank. For a tier 8 and 9 game, you're going to burn through those pretty quick. This tank is fairly ammo limited. As you can see, it only holds 44 rounds, and with 9.5 rounds per minute, you can burn through those rounds in about 4 minutes with constant firing. So you need to be a little bit careful about wasting shots in this tank, especially if you play a full 15-minute standard game. You could find yourself out of rounds quite easily. Consumables, I've just loaded up the standard ones, but there is an argument to ditch the fire extinguisher for either Lend-Lease oil to improve your engine power, which will improve track traverse, or remove speed governor, which will give you 10% extra engine power. But I've found when I use this, I switch it on and I forget to switch it off, and I end up damaging my engine. But for some of you guys that might be a lot more skilled than me, this would probably be a good choice for you. Anyway, so that's the supplies, equipment. Right, so I've gone for rammers and ventilation, mainly to improve the DPM even further, because that's what this tank relies on to stay alive. But the ventilation will help with all the other major crew skills, especially the aim time and the driver skills. And because the base view range is 360 meters, I've gone with binocular telescopes. But like I've said with the other in parts of the review, because the gun arc is so small, you don't spend that long with your tracks in one place. So using your binocular telescopes does become fairly hard, and that is why I'm not running a camouflage net on this tank. The base camo value is pretty good anyway, and because you don't spend too long with your tracks stationary, your binocular telescope and your camo net would not be deployed for that long anyway. So I may even change out binocular telescopes for coated optics when my skill becomes when my crew becomes a lot more skilled with the view range perks. Anyway, so that is something for you to mess around with. Right, I would customise this tank. These are not just for show, they give you a little bit on your camo value, which will help. As you can see, mine's run out, and I'm not playing this tank at the minute, so I've not added it, but I would add that definitely. It's worth the money, especially if you just put a week on it and grind it out for the week. Anyway, so we've had a look at that. Let's just have a look at some of the armour values. So the armour values are actually pretty good. I'm going to go into tanks.gg in a minute, have a look at that in depth. Hit points are 830, that's fairly low for a tier 7 tank destroyer, but the camo value is above average. So long range sniper, try and stay sneaky. You can brawl with this thing, but just be very careful about which targets you choose to pick on, because you don't have a huge amount of hit points. Something like an IS can hit you if they roll decent. Yeah, it's pretty low. Speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour with a 600 horsepower engine, so this thing does get about pretty well for a tier 7 tank destroyer. Yeah, it's quite fun to play actually. The chassis rotation is okay at 34 degrees a second. That is enough just about. If a really fast medium or a light tank gets around you, your tracks do struggle to cope and keep up. But most tanks you can outturn. It says turret rotation is 44 degrees a second, but I assume that's the gun traverse speed. So that's actually pretty good. And the rest about that we've already spoke about. Right, so we're going to have a look at tanks.gg right now. We'll have a look at the armor profile just a little bit more in depth. So here we are, tankers, looking at the SU-100M1 inside tanks.gg. Very useful website. I suggest a lot of you guys go and have a look at the tanks you want to drive in this, just to see what sort of bits of your tank you need to be hiding, what are the plus points, negative points, blah blah blah, and that should help you out. Right, so onto the gun constraints first. As you can see, very small piece of pie. If this was actually a pie, you'd be very hungry. Anyway, so you've got plus and minus 8 degrees of gun traverse, meaning you have 16 degrees total, which is why I was saying about the camo net and stuff. If you've got a light tank coming across you, as soon as it gets to there, you got to move your tracks, move on round, you lose your camo net, you're probably going to get spotted, so there's no point using a camo net. So also the binocular telescopes. If you spot a light tank there, you miss your shot and you've got to move your tracks, so by the time you move your tracks, you're still going to be spotted for a few more seconds to get another shot off, so it's not so bad using the binos. But the camo net obviously only works when it's deployed. Also there, 4 degrees of gun depression. If you jack the front of this tank up on something like a molehill or something like that, you're not going to be able to shoot down on the enemy. So you need to be very careful about where you put your tank and how much of your tank you expose to the enemy. Anyway, so on to the good part of this tank, the DPM. As you can see though, if you're looking, the PC version of the SU-100M1 appears to have had a buff. So what I'm going to do is not fit the ventilation, just going to fit a gun rammer, so I think that's about a 5% buff the PC version may have had. So with just the rammer and no ventilation, but on Xbox this would be including the ventilation, your DPM is almost 3000, and with Brothers in Arms it probably is going to be 3000. So that is the main plus point about playing this tank, is insane DPM. Right, so let's have a look at the 3D model. Let's set it up straight. There is one plus point about this tank, and hopefully if a lot of lower tier tank drivers don't know, this will catch them out. Right, so the Xbox said 90mm of frontal armour, and it does. This bit's 90, but it's very steep in comparison to a lot of upper plates, so it does not bring up particularly high numbers from the front. Around 128 to 136 is the most you're going to get out of that without angling, but you can't angle too much because obviously you don't have the gun arc to be able to shoot back. So if you have let off a shot and you do want to get out of the danger, probably best to drive away at that sort of angle, because that's going to you're going to need more. The front upper plate is looking like it's going to be a pen unless you over angle it, but that's going to expose your drive wheel and all the side armour anyway, so you're just going to have to make do. This frontal red bar, that is 130mm, but it's not particularly well angled, so the overall effective thickness ranges from 158 to 189. So this part here is going to be a pen, and this part here more than likely a bounce for a lot of tanks this thing's going to meet. So the main good bit about this tank, the lower plate is also 90mm, but because the angling is a lot better than the upper plate, it brings up a lot better numbers than the upper plate. So you may be able to troll some lower tier tanks who think the lower plate is a weakness. Anyway, so if we look at the side profile of this tank, the upper superstructure is more vertical than the front plate, which means these areas around the gun are very, very thin. It's 90mm but very steep, so you're only getting like 103, 105 effective there. So that is the main weak point of this tank. The gun mantler is going to be out of question for every single tank pretty much, so this thing can meet, and apart from the odd little area here, that's a very, very small target. But the best part about the front of this tank is the side armour. These plates here are 90mm, but because of the angling, the numbers are very, very good. So hopefully an inaccurate enemy is going to hit these and it's going to ricochet off. So one benefit from this tank from the front. So anyway, side armour, it's not that thick, but the angling is very good, look. So even as a square flat profile on the sides, you're looking at nearly 100mm effective there. So not too bad there, especially for the side of a tier 7 tank destroyer. Again, the upper superstructure is very steep, so it's 75mm thick, but not very good effective thickness there. And the tracks do have some spaced. Well, this is the tracks that count as the spaced on the side, and you have 75mm mainly of side armour, but it does drop lower at the bottom to hardly anything. Anyway, so the back doors, literally you are going to get your back door smashed in, because this is all 45, which is bad enough anyway, but the back door is 15mm. So if you do see the back of one of these, load up high explosive and poke it through there. The 15mm here, I think it is part of the toilet. If you guys didn't know, in real life this tank had a toilet on the top. So that's possibly the toilet, and the armour is pretty toilet. Yeah, so there we go, we've had a quick look at the armour. There are some really good bits and there are some really bad bits. It's all going to be about where the enemies aim. If they aim here or here, you've got a good chance of bouncing. And the gun mantler, if they aim here or here, they've got a very good chance of going through. And also artillery, this is 15, that's 15. If you get hit by artillery there, you're going to get wrecked. Anyway, there we go. We've had a quick look at the armour, so let's go and have a little bit of look at some Ace Tanker gameplay and see how this thing gets on during a good scrap. Right, so we're on Redshire in the SU-100M1. It's one of those stupid team destruction game modes which I really, really dislike. This is the sort of game mode where you can quite possibly get to the end of the 10 off, is it 15 minutes? It's 15 minutes long, and they normally just become big camp fests, and this game is going to be just like that. And I'm going to struggle to motivate my team to do anything different, to be honest, and you'll see my name popping up in yellow on the right quite a lot, just trying to motivate people to not just sit there and wait. Anyway, so it's a top tier game, but there are a lot of tier 7s on both teams, and what you don't have in this tank is a large hit point pool. Sort of like the Tiger one has 1500 hit points, so that would put your 800 odd hit points in perspective there. Tiger would only have to hit you 4 times, you would have to hit a Tiger 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 or 7 times, and you have sort of the same sort of reload time. So you can see just how difficult this tank can be to play well. But what you do have is good camo value and good DPM, so you really need to maximise the two to try and get the best out of this tank. Redshire is actually a pretty good map for this tank. There's lots of cover, lots of different spots you can sneak in and around just to try and get the odd few shots off here and there. And that's what I'm doing right now. On the top of the hill, expecting the enemy's team to push around quite aggressively. Here we go, first target. You can see the aim time and the accuracy is excellent for a Russian tank. And we pick up kill number 1 pretty quick there. Still not been spotted at this point. The best way to make the most out of a tank with a very small gun constraint is to use auto aim. Lock onto a target, move your tracks until you've got a good penetration indicator, and then zoom in to aim up your shot. Right, quick blind shot there. Managed to pick up an extra critical hit, but we are detected, and I'm being quite cheeky here, and I finally paid for it there. We bounced a few shots, but one of them penetrates. So we saw the armour hold up quite well there against equal tier targets, but you cannot rely on it. If you rely on it, you're going to lose all your hit points at the start of a game. See, the mobility is not bad. I think this ground here counts as medium ground, so we're not doing too bad in terms of track traverse so far. And this is the sort of situation where you have to kind of rely on your armour to hold up, pick up that kill. But I think someone is also firing us high explosive as us from stealth, and it's probably a jumbo somewhere. Right, quick snapshot there, we pick up another kill.
Target release. Nice shot. One or more vehicles destroyed.
See how I'm playing this tank? I'm trying to be as cheeky as I can without giving away any hit points. And there's that an easy 8 or a jumbo. I think it's the jumbo, but it's probably firing high explosive with the dirt gun. So I need to be a bit careful of him. He's going to be able to do some damage, whether it be a lot or just a little bit. Long range shots with this gun, not a problem. 0.33 accuracy is very on the very best of Russian gun accuracies. And it's quite a novelty for a Russian tank to have good accuracy. I think that's one of the reasons why I do actually like this tank quite a lot. So at the minute I am fulfilling the role of just the classic tank destroyer. I'm just trying to sit back, making the use of the guys on my team that are actually going to spot. Hopefully I can support them and give them plenty of assist points.
That one didn't go through.
If you look at this sort of A2 area on our map, that we have a friendly heavy tank, but it's sat there guarding his artillery friend. So just keep an eye on that tank and keep an eye on the results screen at the end. I realise some of the parts of this replay are going to be a little bit boring. There was a lot of hanging around. Like I said, I was trying to rely on the guys that were spotting at the start, but most of them have been killed, so I am left kind of at the front now. As most of our guys, we've all just kind of formed a line, and most of them are just sitting there getting shot. Well, this game mode on Redshire does mean that the two sides are pretty much split by the hill in the middle, which means you can use the hill to relocate and just pop up in a different area.
Target acquired.
Right, so that's a tank, a tier 5 tank I don't really want to see. Good view range on that French tank destroyer. Call him Frank from now on. Yeah, we're losing pretty bad at the minute, but I'm not going to give up. Just trying to keep relocating, and trouble, like I said, 4 degrees of gun depression means you have to expose a lot of your tank over the top of this hill. Like that. See, it's gun depression, it just means you end up exposing a lot of your tank. But the camo value appears to be holding up. I've loaded up some premium rounds because that is a jumbo, and I am looking like I'm going to have to carry this team if I want to win. Yeah, it's the trouble with this tank. To keep your binos up, you've got to stay still, really. So, spend a lot of time just sat in the same spot. But we do pick up a spot there and get some assist points.
Ammo up.
That's another enemy tank destroyer left. That's pretty much a one-shot.
Ready to fire on target.
Yeah, with this tank you definitely want your hull lock switched on. So then when you're aiming it won't move the tank if you hit the gun constraint. Yeah, if you turn your hull lock off and you just happen to hit the gun constraints either left or right. Oh, that was a good snapshot. Yeah, it will move the tank, meaning it drops the binos, drops your camo net if you've got one fitted, and also lowers your camo value. Right, I really didn't need that to happen. That's my repair kit gone. That sneaky French tank destroyer with a good view range manages to crit the gun. Right, so I'm going to relocate again. He was firing at me from the left, and I obviously didn't have enough view range to spot him. So I'm going to push around again. Right, so I'm trying to push up the hill using the cover of this bush and also the cover of the wrecks from getting side-shots. Sixth sense goes off. Someone's beating my view range. Still got a heavy camp in A2, and we have a KV3 at H5. It's just that there. This tank's fast enough to relocate pretty quickly, so I was getting outspotted the other end of the hill, so I'm not really going to be too effective there. So I'm pushing down to this end of the hill. See if I can help these guys out a little bit. There we go, out spotted again. Is it that guy there who's spotting me or somebody else? I don't take the risk. We're still outnumbered almost 2 to 1. But I have managed to save a lot of my hip pockets and they will come in handy later on. So now a tricky situation. Do have an ARL-44, he's trying to advance on me, and also, as I poke over this hill in a second, that S-35CA is also going to try and push in on me as well. So I'm going to be in the situation where I have 2 tanks coming from different situations, and this is where a turret would really come in handy. Luckily though, he's not putting his attention on me. Hit him again, he's now a one-shot.
Target locked. Ready to fire. The enemy knows our location.
There he is, there's that French TD. Looks like I'm going to have to hit him twice maybe. Depends how well I roll. Right, so now I'm just trying to pick my moment.
Been detected.
There he is, there he is. Can I get... Oh, I left it a little bit too late and I take one hit, I finish off that French tank destroyer there. Can't underestimate them, they're very dangerous little tanks they are. Good little guns on them. And the ARL-44 as well, you appear to be fully upgraded, so no trouble penning me. It's the same gun as the M445, and there we go, boom. Sneak up on him. Managed to finish them off, so we've evened up the numbers pretty good now. This team destruction game mode, I didn't realise that you don't have to kill them all to win. All you have to be doing is winning on the number of kills. So at this point in the game, with 3 minutes left, we are in a position to win. But I'm not one for just sitting around and waiting, so I want to get some more damage done. Our KV3 there, he's on low health, but it doesn't mean he can't finish off a few more of these tanks. So I'm relocating again, 2.5 minutes to this game left, and still 4 enemies to finish off. So I'll notice that enemy's jumbo is pushing in on our friendly heavy tank over there, so I'm going to try and get in a position to support him and basically use him as a spotter, even though he's sat back there the whole game. There we go, finish off that jumbo. Just over 2 minutes of game left and 3 more enemy tanks to find and deal with.
Focus on this area.
So just looking there, there's 2 tier 7s and 1 tier 5 to find, so I'm going to have to be a little bit cautious. If they were all tier 5s, I would just, with this tank, I would just go find them and kill them. Yeah, the armour profile's not great, but it's good enough against tier 5s and some tier 6s. So that guy goes down, there's 2 heavy tanks left. Where are they? Come on, where are they? Someone's been pinging these buildings down here, so they're either actually there or someone's just pinging the map for no reason. Oh, there's one. Oh no, he's got a lot of health. Hit him once, swinging his turret. I drive straight by, don't want any of that. He's got the 90mm. Think about going in on him, but I'm going to help with that guy first. He's out in the open. So I lock on, aim in, hit him, track him. Can I get the kill? No, someone takes the kill, but we get the tracking points. So just this M445 left with 30 seconds left on the clock. There he is. Oh, I dunked the shot, and he's got his turret facing the backwards. Gonna beat his reload. There we go. I've switched to high explosive. You can see the arse end of his tank. Only a few seconds left on the game. Getting trolled by the gun traverse a little bit. Hit him, penetrate. He's now one shot. Few seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, and we take the victory with 2 seconds left on the clock. So there we go. I actually lost money on that game because I did fire off all my premium rounds, but then if you do load up a lot of premium rounds, you're going to have to use them in the end for such a drawn out game. Picked up 7 kills, high caliber, mastery ace tanker, devastator for the 7 kills, top gun, and a steel wall for the 1210 damage blocked, and I did 4344 damage with 24 penetrations. Not a bad game, if I do say so myself, and that is the best game I've had in this tank, and probably will have, to be honest. Over 2000 base experience and a tidy amount of kills and damage. See, the shot ratio was fairly good considering how many rounds I fired, and most of it hit penetrated. So you can see with this tank, it's not like your big derpy SU-152 where you're lucky to get 4 or 5 penetrations in one game, but you still do a fair amount of damage. With this thing, it's all about the DPM and just trying to be as sneaky as you can, and that's the best way to play this tank. So there we go, tankers. We've had a good look around the SU-100M1, we've had a look at the armour profile in tanks.gg, and we've seen some ace tanker gameplay, so time to sum this tank up. I would say 90% of people will dislike this tank with a passion, but for the 10% of you that do get on with it and you don't mind a lack of gun depression and a lack of gun constraint, and you can make the most of it, the DPM is just going to let you do some serious damage consistently, but you're going to have to be very careful about where you situate yourself on the battlefield. The slightest bump in the ground will see you not being able to aim down on a target. A fast target moving from left to right or right to left is going to see you constantly moving your track and losing your dots for aim time again. But for probably 1 out of 5 games, everything's going to go right and you can be able to put out some serious damage with that immense DPM. And on that 5th game, you will like this tank and possibly love it like I do. And that's why I wanted to put this review out today. If you want to go up to the Object 263, put some time into each tank and fully upgrade them and try and enjoy them whilst you're grinding up to the next tank, rather than trying to skip and really disliking the tank by skipping the upgrade path and trying to go up to the next tank. And that is just a bit of advice for you guys. Right, so do I like this tank? Well, yeah, it's not bad at all. There are a lot worse tier 7 tank destroyers in the game, but it is very limited by its gun constraints. But the DPM does make up for that, in my opinion. But like I said, a lot of people are going to dislike this tank, and probably the comments are going to be filled with people that don't like it either. Anyway, so there you go guys, hope you enjoyed this review, hope it helps you out. For you guys that have not been up this line at all, the standard SU-152 line is probably going to be a lot easier for most people to play, but if you do like high rate of fire guns, then this might be right up your street. Right, so there we go guys, please give the video a like if you did, please sub if you're not, and I'll catch you on the next one. See you later.